Houston? Welcome into another episode of Juiced Up, only found right here on GallerySports.com. I am your host, Rachel Von Orania, and on this show, I like to give you my passionate, unfiltered takes on whatever's going on in the world of sports. And you know what? Hey, I live in Houston, Texas. I went to the University of Houston, and guess what? We are really good at basketball. So I want to talk about him. I brought on Andy Yanez. He's one of Gallery Sports' very own. He's also a host of the Pod Slamma Jamma podcast, as well as the Let's Rage Cougs podcast. Andy, thank you so much for joining me today. Now, the Cougs, they're wrapping up. They're out of conference play. They come out of it with a 12-1 record. That one loss coming to Alabama, unfortunately, I'm pretty sure that happened right after the last time I spoke to you, if I remember correctly.
That is correct.
Yeah, so now they're going to begin their conference play. They got an AAC opener against Tulsa. The last time we spoke, Andy, if my memory serves me correct, you told me that UConn was, in your opinion at that time, the biggest threat to upset Houston in a game. Do you still stand by that, or has anything changed?
Oh, absolutely. I think the reason for that in regards to Connecticut, by the way, now they're ranked number 2 in the country behind just Purdue, which the top 5 in the AP poll standings, they've been managed to stay at the same top 5 for the past week. But the reason I picked UConn is because I got to see them in the Phil Knight Invitational. And you mentioned Alabama. They was able to come in to the Fertitta Center and hand Houston their only non-conference loss of the season, where UConn dominated that Alabama team up in Oregon, and just really how well they played together, their length, which is something that, teams like St. Mary's, when you're looking specifically at Houston, they've given the Cougars a lot of problems in the past. Now the Cougars have been able to overcome it for much of the point this season, but that's really what stood out to me for UConn, not only how well they were playing, but how dominant they look against high-quality opponents, because going back to that Phil Knight Invitational tournament, those were heavyweight teams, and UConn cruised through that tournament to be able to win it, and from that point on, they've been high on my list, and that was the reason why I picked UConn. And Purdue up there, too, they're a real good reason there's number 1. Now, it's just at the end of the day, who can be in March, who can be streaking at the right time in March, because the Cougs are right behind them at number 3.
Yeah, definitely UConn. I'm glad that they are not technically, they're not in our conference anymore.
They're not in the conference anymore.
Yeah, that's
that would be a really good matchup. It would be a really good battle, but now they're part of the Big East Conference. It'd be a matchup that you want to see when you want to see the top heavyweights of the basketball world meet. But from a Houston perspective, to be able to get wins, certainly it's a good thing that UConn isn't in the conference anymore.
Yeah, not mad about that at all. Okay, so look, I hate to say this, but it's true. It's just kind of a universal truth. With Christmas and the holidays just passing, for a lot of people, they say, you've heard it before, basketball season is just now beginning. They say it starts after Christmas, right? Now, what would you tell people who haven't been really keeping up with college basketball this season and are just now looking to really start following it closely? What would you tell them? What should they know about this year's Houston Cougars team and what their expectations should be?
Well, when it comes to the Houston Cougars this season, and what I would tell them, first of all, I'm sure the main focus for that has been because they've been paying attention to football season. I'd tell them shame on them because they've missed a really good season in regards to basketball. What I would tell them across the national perspective is that it seems like it's a lot open, just in terms of, I mentioned UConn, I mentioned Purdue, Houston at 3, but when you look at top to bottom, there's not really that one clear heavyweight favorite. If you go back to years past, especially when you think of the blue bloods, when it comes to Duke and North Carolina, those have always been the premier programs that you think of at top of the college basketball world. And this season it's a lot more different. North Carolina, they went in a stretch where I believe they lost 4 in a row. They've begun to kind of bounce back from that, but that just goes to show on any given night, Alabama came into the Fertitta Center and beat the Houston Cougars after the Cougars were able to build a 15-point lead. They stayed poised. They were able to overcome, which was, I know this is kind of a segue, but that Fertitta Center crowd was really absolutely spectacular in that game. They were able to overcome that. And then the Cougars turn around. They go to then number 2 Virginia in Charlottesville in a hostile environment of their own, and they're able to pick up a good victory in that way. So I think that parity, that's the right word, is the one that's probably that sticks out the most. And when it comes to Houston specifically, they haven't been able to look at the Cougars. I think the most exciting thing about this team is that their best basketball is yet to come because they're young. So obviously when it comes to March, that's really when they want to be hitting their stride. And this roster, this core group, when you look at the playmakers, they have a chance to be able to play their best basketball come that March level, which at the end of the day, that's what counts the most.
Yeah, well, definitely the level of competition is going to be turned up, Andy, in March, because right now I'm looking at the conference play, the remaining schedule. It's pretty much conference
Hmm.
play until March, right? So I'm looking at the
Correct.
conference, not very good, and then I look at their out of conference schedule that they just had, what we just went through, right? And the
Hmm.
two really good teams that they played were Alabama and then Virginia. They lost to
Correct.
Alabama, beat Virginia. Are there any games upcoming in the regular season schedule that you think can help U of H overcome that bad taste in their mouth from the loss to Alabama?
When you look at the roster specifically, or when you look inside the team, they're going to give you the answer that every game is a big game for them. They're just trying to be able to stockpile wins. If you ask Kelvin Sampson, he'll give you the answer, the straightforward answer that it is hard to just pick up a win in the world of college basketball and just basketball in general. And when you look across the conference, Memphis is that team that, even going back the last few seasons, especially when you look at it from a rivalry perspective, fan bases for both sides, Memphis fans and Houston fans. Doesn't matter what sport, there's just some beef when it comes to those two fan bases. And those are going to be the two games that they play when they play each other, which the American Athletic Conference always likes to schedule them towards the end of the regular season, when you'd assume that both the teams were going to be hitting their stride, just a few weeks removed out from the American Athletic Conference postseason tournament and obviously the NCAA tournament. That's really the big games that you'll have circled. You can't discount, especially when it comes to road games. Houston's going to open their conference opener, like you mentioned, against Tulsa on Wednesday nights. That's been a place that's given problems to the Cougars in the past in regards to trying to play the Golden Hurricane on the road. It's always a tough place to play. And you look across Central Florida, Cincinnati, East Carolina, they all have 9 wins too. So any given night, especially when you're on the road, it could be a problem for the Cougars. But I think those teams specifically are the ones that could potentially pose some threats to the Cougars. Now, from here on out, like you mentioned, the Cougars are probably going to be favored in every game remaining. So it's going to be tough, because at the end of the day, that's not the games aren't played on paper. So they have to go out there and perform night in and night out. And like I said, they're trying to continue to improve as the season goes on so they can be hitting their stride come March.
Well, what I took from all of that, and this is definitely not what you said, but as a Coug fan and a Coug alumni, what I took from that is that we're going undefeated in conference play, baby. March Madness, here we come. Love to see it. Andy, thank you so much for joining me today. Love having you on. I'm sure I'm going to have you on again to talk some more Cougs basketball as the season progresses. Guys, that is all the time we have for now. This has been Juiced Up, only found right here on gallerysports.com. That is your one-stop shop for immediate insight and information. I am Rachel Von Orania, and I will see you mañana.